many storylines and angles we need to discuss from this finals rematch. Stephen A., you were in the building. Ultimately, what happened to the Cavs?
Well, we all know that the Cleveland Cavaliers got embarrassed last night. It was an absolutely disgraceful performance. Let's take a moment to give props to the Golden State Warriors doing what they do the way that they did it. Steph Curry came out, hit a three-pointer for his first shot of the game, hit 4 three-pointers in the first quarter. Klay Thompson added one. They ended up shooting 19 of 40 from three-point range for the game. They just completely blitzed the Cleveland Cavaliers. In the aftermath of the game, Skip Bayless, I was reduced to being inside the Golden State Warriors locker room. Draymond Green looking me in my face talking about, if it was anybody else, I would go off because I can't believe you thought they were going to win this game, but I'm going to let it slide. I had to sit up there and literally take my gloves and slap myself on both sides of my face and then apologize to him and the Golden State Warriors, for thinking that they would lose this game. They completely annihilated the Cleveland Cavaliers, humbled them to levels that I didn't know a LeBron James squad was capable of being humbled. LeBron James himself had to be humbled because he only had 16 points. The leader that he is, the superstar that he is, it appeared to be an absolute non-factor last night. He was a non-factor last night. But it goes significantly deeper when you consider the way that Kyrie Irving, being the stud that he is, got completely outplayed. Steph Curry literally was toying with him, not just with jump shots, Skip Bayless, but backdoor cuts to both him and Dellavedova, just abusing them at will, doing what he wanted, laughing in their face, all the while doing so. And then obviously J.R. Smith got himself ejected because he is prone to making idiotic decisions when he is down because he doesn't handle adversity very well. And then, of course, there's the issue of Kevin Love, who had 3 points and 6 rebounds. He's the 5-year, $113 million man, a member of the Big Three, who was an absolute non-factor. And dare I say, Skip, other than Steph Curry, he was the biggest culprit to what happened to Cleveland last night in certain respects because he had to defend Draymond Green, who was also doing what he wanted to do. He wasn't physical enough for Draymond Green. He wasn't fast enough for Draymond Green. He couldn't guard Draymond Green. I mean, he just got utterly embarrassed. And then, of course, there's David Blatt, the head coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who I spoke to after the game last night. And he said, Stephen A., hey, look. Bottom line is we didn't show up tonight. We weren't mentally prepared to play. That's on me. It's my fault. We didn't come mentally ready to play last night. But I think that a lot of people are looking at him with a raised eyebrow because, Skip, I got to tell you, we watched this game. And sitting there watching the game, the fans were talking about it in the arena, during the game, and especially after the game. All he did was stand there with his hands on his hips and occasionally call timeouts. There was absolutely nothing else that he did. Golden State consistently found themselves in 4-on-3 situations because he was giving up the middle of the floor. They weren't getting back on defense enough. Even when they were back, they weren't going through the proper rotations. They were doubling when they shouldn't have been doubling. They were missing double teams when they were supposed to employ them. Okay, on the offensive side of the ball, this Princeton offense, where there was supposed to be ball movement and backdoor cuts, they were completely and utterly non-existent. Ultimately, Cleveland was reduced to try and engage in one-on-one battles, whether it was J.R. Smith, it was LeBron James, it was Kyrie Irving. Nothing worked, and they didn't seem to have any kind of cohesiveness whatsoever. In the end, the Cleveland Cavaliers walked into this game winning 14 of their last 16 games, Skip. But in the end, they showed us last night. The Golden State Warriors showed us last night. They are in a completely different class than the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is not a situation where it was just one game. The way that they do things and the way Steve Kerr has got Luke Walton coaching this team, it just seems to be a class considerably above what David Blatt is doing, according to players, according to coaches around the league watching these guys play. It was just one of those situations, man, where you're just looking at Cleveland and you're saying, what are you going to do? It's literally been reduced to the point, Skip, particularly after that beatdown last night. Because remember, it's all about a championship. We assume that they're going to the finals. So it's all about who can they compete against in the West. And they literally, Skip, I'm not talking about me. This is not me talking. I'm telling you what was said to me in the arena last night, whether it was by fans, whether it was by other folks that are officials for both respective teams, or whether it was coaches literally texting me on my phone, because you know I get my text messages. They were literally saying it's coming down to one or two scenarios. Either David Blatt is going to have to go, and you're going to have to get somebody in here who can coach on this level against these NBA coaches, meaning being familiar with what they do and how to combat it, or you're going to have to get rid of Kevin Love and get somebody in here that could actually play on both sides of the ball. You're going to have to do one or the other if you're David Griffin, Dan Gilbert, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, because as presently constructed, last night emphatically showed us, if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, the best you can hope for is another Eastern Conference crown, because you ain't beating anybody in the West when you get exposed like that.
Okay, I have a whole lot to say to all that you just said, but I'm going to turn everything upside down. I'm going to go to the last points that you made here. I think you're overreacting just a little bit here to say that all of a sudden Cleveland is not even in Golden State's league. I think Cleveland is in Golden State's league. I still think in a 7-game series that LeBron and company could figure out how to play with Steph and company. But I do agree with you, and I've always agreed with you about the 2 points you made. David Blatt, I'm going to say it again. I'm sorry, Stephen A. I made a point on the show the other day after the game Cleveland at San Antonio. LeBron just coaches this team. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't criticize LeBron for coaching the team because I don't think David Blatt is very good. So LeBron basically takes himself in and out of games. I brought up the point the other day the other night at San Antonio. LeBron waved off the substitution. He wanted to keep Dellavedova in the game for an inbounds play. He's coaching the team. So does he deserve any blame for this? I'm not going to blame him. You probably need a real basketball coach before they can take it to the next level. But I'm not going to just write them off. Now back to Kevin Love. I'm going to say what I've said 10,000 times on this show again, and I was proven right again last night. Way overpaid because he's way overrated. Have I not been on the record? So I'm not second guessing. I first guessed this. They gave him way too much money for what he's worth in big stage games like this one. So what did he go? 1 for 5 or whatever it was. He's a no-show because that's who he is. I'm sorry. He's a nice piece to the puzzle, but he's only a piece. And when all of a sudden the other team, Golden State, the best team in the league, takes it up to that level, Kevin Love gets lost in this game. Okay, let me go back to the start now. I was right there with you yesterday on the show, and I want to do my mea culpa also, because silly me, I thought LeBron and company, with the Kyrie and with the Kevin Love they did not have for the games in Cleveland in the finals, were ready to make a statement that, hey, we can defend our home court against the defending champions. And I was utterly, stupidly wrong, because this was, I got to say this was the worst humiliation and embarrassment of LeBron James' career. Is that fair to say? Because it's on your home floor on national TV on MLK Day. Can't get it all out. Okay. And you have a minus 35 and plus minus, which is the worst statistically of your entire career. Has he ever been more embarrassed than that? And the reason I put it in this perspective, Stephen A., it was even more stunning to me than Carolina 31, Seattle nothing, with 6:26 left in the second quarter of the football game we saw a day earlier. Because I thought LeBron would be the one with the motivation. We haven't talked yet about the champagne angle, and I don't know what you thought of it, if too much was made of it, but I made quite a bit of it, that Steph was just talking about the good memories he hoped to have of the locker room at Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, where they closed out the championship, obviously, and he said, hopefully it still smells like champagne. Well, that's a shot to me. And if I were a Cavalier, I would take that personally. And according to Cleveland.com, a bunch of them did feel like they were disrespected. And then, remember, yesterday at the shoot-around, the reporters questioned LeBron about this, that, and the other. And as they were breaking up and walking away, LeBron called him back and said, you didn't ask me about Steph's champagne quote. And they were like, did you want us to? And he said, you know what? I'll have a response to that after the game tonight, which is obviously last night. Well, they didn't have a response during the game. This was as unready a team to play at tip-off as I've ever seen. They gave Bogut, if we could see that real quickly, they gave Bogut a wide-open dunk to start the game. That's when I said, what, this is the second-best defensive team statistically in pro basketball. And you let Andrew Bogut lose for a quick dunk? That was just unforgivable to me. And then, Stephen A., what the boat I missed, the boat we missed yesterday was the guy who had blood in his eyes was Steph Curry, because you and I both agreed after the finals, the day after the finals, they had a fortuitous run because they kept getting teams who had lost their point guard all the way up to Kyrie through the playoffs. And Steph took that very personally. He tweeted me about it. He was furious about it. And remember in the game last year at Cleveland, they lost at Cleveland last year, 110-99, and Steph had a poor night. He was 5 for 17. Didn't make many threes. I forget what it was, like 2 for 17. I'm sorry, 2 for 7. And the point is, Steph was the one who had something to prove last night. And as you pointed out, he made 4 threes in the first quarter. And then after they had 70-44 at halftime, I thought he tried to embarrass LeBron in the third quarter. And you know what? He did. He made 3 more threes and scored 14 points just in the third quarter. They were just running it up, man. That was some total annihilation and humiliation. So your thoughts?
Well, I will say this. There's a few other people that we can't let off the hook. I spoke to Tristan Thompson after the game. He was talking about how, we were supposed to be ready. We heard what Steph Curry had to say. We were supposed to be ready, but we got to go back to the drawing board because this was just embarrassing, to say the least. And his performance wasn't anything to brag home about. The man played just 12 minutes, only attempted 1 shot, which he missed, had 4 personal fouls. He had more fouls than points and rebounds in this game. That's just inexcusable. He knows he could do better than that. I'm not going to go as far as my man Tracy McGrady. It was texting me and telling me, he called them straight garbage. I'm not going to go that far, but I will tell you that there is no question that when you look at Tristan Thompson, he could have played better as well. So we could look at a whole bunch of players and see the way that the Cleveland Cavaliers play. I'm going to tell you something, Skip. I'm not overreacting. And I'm going to tell you why I'm not overreacting. Because the measuring stick for the Cleveland Cavaliers is title contention, not Eastern Conference crown contention. We're conceding they're the best team in the Eastern Conference. We're conceding that although Miami and Chicago and potentially Detroit or Indiana down the line, somebody can end up giving them, or Toronto, of course, somebody can end up giving them a run for their money. In the end, let's call it what it is. None of us anticipate that somebody other than Cleveland will be in the finals in June representing the Eastern Conference. It's all about who is going to face LeBron out of the Western Conference. Now, we saw Cleveland play competitively against San Antonio, but things just didn't work out. But when we look at them, we look at their size, we look at their togetherness, we look at their defensive prowess, we look at their experience, and we say, where is this from the Cleveland Cavaliers? How are you going to thwart that? You don't want any parts of San Antonio. But if you got Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, you should be able to go up against Golden State. Well, Golden State not only came, they announced they were coming before they arrived. Talked smack, let you know they were coming, that they had no fear nor any concerns. Remember, on Christmas Day, they didn't have Harrison Barnes. So they looked at it from that perspective and they said, we'll see you. And sure enough, they walked into your building in sub-freezing temperatures, okay, and literally with a sold-out crowd and everybody packed and hyped. This is what happened. To the point where after the game, Dan Gilbert, first of all, the Cavaliers, Skip, you're supposed to be available 10 minutes after the game. Yep. The Cavaliers, they had the media waiting for approximately 35 minutes, okay? So the NBA needs to, brush up on that. You got people, not me, but you have people missing their deadlines because of this. Help some of our contemporaries out in the media. 35 minutes waiting for them, that's just ridiculous. After Dan Gilbert was still in the locker room, in this separate room, away from all of that, with other folks from his ownership group. David Griffin just went out of the locker room after that, undoubtedly probably making some calls, because when they're in the locker room for that length of period of time, there's a concern because of how things went down. You're looking for things that provide you with some kind of test that says, here's where we are and here's where we need to get. You got to think about this. The Cleveland Cavaliers, some have argued have been a bit lackadaisical in doing what it takes to position LeBron to get another ring. Now, I'm not one that completely agrees with that. I look at the trade that brought Iman Shumpert and Timothy Mozgov and ultimately J.R. Smith to Cleveland. I thought Griffin did a good job in getting those guys on board. But you did go into the NBA Finals with Dellavedova as a primary backup. And regardless of how he played, the reality is that there's no reason he should have been your primary backup, which is why you went and you got Mo Williams this offseason. Now you're looking at something else they might need to do. And signing Kevin Love to $113 million ain't cutting it. Having David Blatt, who a bunch of people, I like David Blatt. Like I said, he was a rookie last year. You want to give him a chance. But the flip side is that if you let go of if you let go of your former #1 overall pick, okay, and you did so with the belief that we have this short window of opportunity with LeBron back and we've got to maximize it, then it's inconsistent with what you said as an organization to have somebody who never coached in the NBA before that isn't familiar with going up against these guys that he has to go against. So I'm not advocating anything on behalf of David Blatt. I'm telling you what a whole bunch of other people are saying. They're looking at the infrastructure of the Cleveland Cavaliers and saying you're taking LeBron for granted because he's not going to win a chip as this situation is presently constructed. You use games like this, Skip, to come to those conclusions. You don't worry about him against Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, Toronto. You use games like this to measure where indeed you truly are and where you are not. And whether it's because of their talent, whether it's because of the mindset, when you look about JR and the stupid act that he committed last night, whether it's other things, the fact is I'm not overreacting. The Cleveland Cavaliers got exposed as a team who simply isn't ready for the big boys out west. And even LeBron confirmed that last night. I talked to him. We were at his locker last night after the game. It's exactly what he said. And oh, by the way, Skip, did you see the quote from Kevin Love? Kevin Love's got a quote in the Cleveland paper, Skip, and he says, we're going to take, we need to, he said, going to take a lot of guys looking in the mirror, and it starts with our leader right over there and dwindles down. He pointed the finger right at LeBron James. He said it's going to take he said there's a quote in the Cleveland paper. Go to cleveland.com, Skip. If you got, I got the local paper with me, but you can go to cleveland.com. And it's right there. He says it's going to take a lot of guys looking in the mirror, and it starts with our leader right over there, and it dwindles down. This is from Kevin Love, Mr. 3 points. Even though he's getting paid $100 million, he can't guard me, okay, or you. Even though I like Kevin Love offensively, but defensively, he's atrocious. We all know it, okay? Yeah. And he sat up there and said that with a straight face to media members inside the locker room before LeBron addressed the media. Okay. Look, man, this is not good.
Are you sure he wasn't pointing at Blatt? He was pointing at LeBron?
Yes. Okay. It was LeBron. I had it confirmed. Once I saw that quote, I called a few colleagues. It was LeBron James he was pointing at when he said that. Not literally meaning because LeBron was in the back room, in the trainer's room, but he said, I lead over there, pointed to his locker stall. This is not good. It's not good.
And remember, last year, LeBron had several motivational tweets that appeared aimed at Kevin Love. Remember about fitting in or fitting out. You need to quit worrying about fitting in and fit out, meaning just be yourself, be who you are. Okay, so we can't leave this without going back to Kyrie Irving. You and I both agree. He's the best offensive player on this team. When he gets it in gear, he's right there with Steph to me. He can be unstoppable. We all witnessed him scoring 57 points against my Spurs, albeit with the help of overtime a year ago in San Antonio. So where was he last night, and who's responsible? Listen, I'm just watching on TV, but I could tell from the tip Kyrie was uninterested in playing offense or defense, especially defense, with a lot of Steph duty. Well,
so I didn't see that. I saw a guy who was ineffective offensively, but I will say this. I see a guy that doesn't have that dog in him defensively. Defensively. Offensively, he has it. But defensively, I don't see Kyrie having the dog in him that says, I'm going to shut you down. You're not scoring on me. And I see a guy in Kevin Love that doesn't appear to have any dog in him at all.
Okay,
so
I
when
agree.
When I look at it from that perspective, I want to just take a moment to pause here, Skip. Kevin Love, who gets like $19 million this year and a raise each year over the next 4 years, 5 years, $113 million, scores 3 points.
Okay.
And on the night that he scores 3, on the night that he scores, I want you to understand the magnitude of this, Skip. On the night that he scores 3 points, he sits there, says, well, we got to look in the mirror, and it starts what I got over there. Really? Really? You went there, Mr. 3 points? Do you 3 points, Skip?
Okay.
And you have the nerve to say that?
All right.
I mean,
last
I don't know what
point.
to say.
Last point. This team clearly came out flat, and the other team came out with fire in its eyes, starting with its leader, Steph Curry. Who's responsible for that? Is it LeBron motivating before the game? Is it David Blatt, or the lack of David Blatt being able to get the team ready to play? You got to be ready to play at tip for a game like this.
It starts with LeBron James, because he is not shy about calling himself the leader.
Yep.
So therefore, you have to have some culpability, but at the same time, there's going to be peaks and valleys in a lot of these games. And when you have those valleys, when you're having those struggles, you kind of need somebody in the coaching box, somebody that's there ready to take the reins.
Yep.
And one of the other things that was telling with me, when the game was out of reach and they was down by 40, LeBron was sitting on the bench next to Tyronn Lue. He wasn't somebody that was sitting at the end of the bench.
Yep.
He was sitting there with Tyronn Lue. And that's usually who he's talking to. That's usually who most of the guys elect to talk to, as opposed to David Blatt.
Stephen A.
You've got some problems in Cleveland.
We're
We're
having some technical difficulties with you here, so I'm sorry to cut you off right now. But now the Cavs 0-3 versus the favorites out of the West, the Warriors and the Spurs. And Steph continues to make great memories there in Cleveland. Up next, can Tom Brady make good memories in Denver? The Sheriff and Psycho Tom go head-to-head. Darren Woodson, what are you, Team Brady? Team